Welcome. This is The Fringe Show. I'm your host, Tatiana Zalan, and I go live every Friday at 2 p.m. Dubai time. The Fringe helps you to navigate the rapidly changing world and increase the odds of your success. Here we discuss technologies, startups, and mental models of successful people so that you too can take advantage of the opportunities in the new digital world. This is a live show, and I very much encourage you to identify yourself to the Facebook and also StreamYard, because I would love to see your comments as we go along. Leave your comments, say hello, please do so. Today's live show is my third show, and some of you may remember that in my second show, when we started, we talked about three myths and kind of half-truths about blockchain and cryptocurrencies. We talked about that cryptocurrency is a scam, that it's wastes too much energy, and also it's used for money laundering and therefore criminals. And I suggested that maybe if you want really to debunk these myths, maybe, and we did in the second show, what we also want to do is to look at the early origins of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. And this is exactly what we're going to do now, looking at the early history of all these inventions and wonderful, brilliant minds that contributed to what Bitcoin is today. So let me see whether I have any comments here. Okay, hello, Gaia. Hello, great to see you. Excellent. Well, what I decided to do today is a little bit different from what I would be doing normally. Some of you are very visual people, and today I'm going to talk about quite a few different names, places, dates, and also names of various cryptocurrencies and various inventions. And for some people, it's better when this information is presented more visually rather than in an auditory form. And this is what I'm trying to do today. I will share with you some slides. And this is the very first time I do it on StreamYard. And I'm not really quite sure how it's going to work. Hopefully it will. My only concern is that I probably won't be able to see your comments as I'm sharing the slides. But once I'm finished, I'm quite happy to go back and to see what comments are there. So let me do that, try to share my slides. Okay, so we're probably in business, right? And what I want to start with is just to emphasize what enormous potential is in crypto. The whole wealth today, the world's wealth is around 700 to maybe 800 trillion US dollars. And one day, I'm pretty sure that all of the world's wealth will be tokenized on blockchain. It may not be Ethereum, it may not be Bitcoin, but will certainly be tokenized on blockchain. And I'm giving here a quote from Jeremy Allaire, who is one of the leaders of a project in the cryptocurrency project, who is saying using cryptocurrency to tokenize real world assets will make the web look like a cute experiment, comparatively speaking. So he's just emphasizing how big the crypto potential is in numbers. And remember, we're trying to debunk this myth that cryptocurrencies are somehow scam and is used by criminals. Where do we start? Well, probably the best place to start with it is with Alan Turing. He's the father of computing. In 1936, when Alan Turing was only 24 years old, he wrote a seminal piece which was titled Uncomputable Numbers. And in this paper, he stated something which became quite foundational for the entire computing industry. One day, we could build machines that could compute any problem that a human could using zeros and ones. That's from his paper. Alan Turing, and he's very well known. There are lots of books and even movies dedicated to him and his work. And he and his team of cryptocurrency, or not cryptocurrency, but cryptographers during Second World War were trying to decode German messages, and arguably they saved millions of lives during Second World War. Why is Alan Turing so important for the cryptocurrency industry? It's for a number of reasons. One is just he's the father of computing, and neither Bitcoin nor other cryptocurrencies would have existed without him. And the second reason is that the second largest cryptocurrency, called Ethereum, is using programming language, which is called Solidity, and it is so-called Turing complete, which means that it can with the help of this language, you can compute almost anything given enough resources. I invite you to have a look at this list. This list was compiled by some researchers in Princeton, and here they numbered all the early implementations of e-money, something like 100 of them. These are all used cryptocurrency or some form of cryptography. Some of them were cash-based, some of them were credit card-based, some of them were just academic papers and theories, others were implementation. And I bet you if you go through this list, you probably won't find any familiar names, and this is for a reason. All of these are failed implementations. The only name that you probably will recognize is PayPal, and the only reason PayPal, who was pretty much into the same game as Bitcoin, they wanted to do cryptographic payments of the internet using handheld devices. They pivoted from this original idea, and therefore they survived. Let's talk a little bit about early contributors to Bitcoin and to other cryptocurrencies, and we cannot possibly not mention the names of Ralph Merkle, David Chaum, Adam Back, Wei Dai, Nick Szabo, and Satoshi Nakamoto. That all of that contributed to the Bitcoin invention. Starting with Ralph Merkle. Merkle is computer science PhD, is very well known for the so-called Merkle tree. Merkle trees really look like trees. There's a data structure, a way to organize data into branches and roots. So that's just a way of storing data. He patented this idea of digital signatures and Merkle trees. And that's why is this important? It's important so that the data cannot be tampered with. Remember, Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies and blockchains are very well known for not being able to be tampered with, for being immutable. So you can't change the information. Once it's there, it can't be changed. And Bitcoin also uses this type of this method of data organization, and what it allows it to do to compress or compact all these millions and billions of transactions on Bitcoin into making it available and possible to keep it in limited space. So you can compress the data, and then it can be kept so that it doesn't take up too much space. So that was Merkle's contribution. David Chaum is known for being probably the first one to invent cryptographic cash. He called it e-cash. David Chaum was very much into privacy, and he considered cryptography the only thing that can give power to the individual in the information age. These are his words. Also PhD in computer science, and his PhD contained almost all but one element of everything that we see in Bitcoin today. He came up with some quite radical ideas back then in the 80s. One is a number that is worth money. And what this means is that, well, if you look at all the Bitcoin transactions, there are kind of string of numbers. And what he's saying is this string of numbers is worth money. Another problem that he solved, or rather two problems that he solved, was how to keep digital cash anonymous and at the same time prevent double spending problem with blind signatures. And it was really a big deal in computer science because it's very easy to make copies in the digital world. I can send thousands of different emails to different people. I can also copy something from the web. Maybe it's a picture, maybe it's a symbol, a label, whatever it might be, and I can make infinite copies of that. But this is not what we want in financial system. We must make sure that I, Tatiana, if I want to send money to Richard, or say $100, that I can't say the same amount of dollars to Larissa or to Gaia or to Vicky or to Robin, right? So it can't be replicated, it can't be copied. This is called double spending, and this is exactly the problem that he solved. He patented his inventions, and in 1989 he founded the so-called DigiCash. That was the name of his company, and eCash was implemented in several banks, believe it or not, in US, and at least one bank in Finland. And he also, in 1994, he conducted the first transactions, Bitcoin transaction, eCash transaction on the stage at the major conference. David Chaum, so he's really contributed in a significant way to the way cryptocurrencies now work. He also inspired a whole movement, and the movement was called the Cypherpunks movement. It's coming from two words. One is cipher, and another is cyberpunks. So these two words were combined by a hacker called Sanjut. By the way, she was a woman. And it was a movement that believed that cryptography will bring, or enact rather, social and political change. Some of these people were crypto anarchists, and they didn't believe in control, of state control or corporate control. They became quite well known after Wired, which is one of the leading tech magazines in the US, published an article in 1993, early 90s, called Crypto Rebels. And they outlined the whole movement of cypherpunks, civil libertarians, and millionaire hackers, as they called them. And they were very much into privacy. Privacy was their main concern. And this is what they wrote in their manifesto that this particular article cites. You can find, privacy is necessary for an open society in the electronic age. We cannot expect governments, corporations, or other large faceless organizations to grant us privacy. We must defend our own privacy if we expect to have any. Cypherpunks write code. We know that someone has to write software to defend privacy, and we are going to write it. And this is exactly what they did. Another famous name here is Wei Dai, who invented B-money. And it also happened around 1998. He published a paper, B-Money, an anonymous distributed electronic cash system. Unlike other academics, he wasn't. Although he was a computer scientist, he was a computer engineer and worked for a number of tech companies, including Microsoft. Wei Dai has left legacy for the space, and he's still living. It's just that he's a very private person. We don't know a lot about him, but there are two things that are named after him in the crypto space. One is DAI, which is a stable coin used in decentralized finance, and another one is Gwei. Gwei is a unit of Ether used on the Ethereum blockchain. In his work, he already outlined some of the principles that we see in Bitcoin, like untraceable, pseudonymous entities can operate with each other, and also we provide them with a medium of exchange and a method of enforcing contract. All these elements we can find in Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. That unfortunately remained just an idea, B-Money. It was only a paper that he wrote. It wasn't implemented, and possibly he just didn't have any marketing budget to go and pitch it to corporations, pitch it to banks. But his legacy is still very much alive. Nick Szabo is another name that we need to know. Nick Szabo is a polymath. He is a computer scientist as well as a legal scholar. And there are also always a lot of speculations about Satoshi Nakamoto. Who can he be or she be? And many researchers, many people in this space have suggested that if there's only one person alive now, that could be Nick Szabo, but he denied it so many times that we probably need to believe him. But he came up with a couple of ideas. Firstly, BitGold, which was a way of securing transactions with the help of cryptographic cash on the web, and also the idea of smart contracts. Smart contracts are contracts that are written in code. If something happens, then this will happen. All of that is in code. So cash, digital cash, and also smart contracts. None of these ideas, neither David Chaum's nor of Wei Dai nor of Nick Szabo's, were fully decentralized. In David Chaum's case, there was still a central authority, and this is exactly the same for Nick Szabo. So the intermediary was not eliminated in his proposal. How do we ensure that any money, including digital money, has got value? To have value, money needs to have some form of scarcity, and this is why we talk about, say, diamonds and also gold as kind of money in some shape or form, because it's scarce and it's got value. And there was this idea that if we mint money, then we can solve computational problems while minting money. These computational problems are known as puzzles or work. So users who are using money, who are using or minting money, need to do some work to prove that they cannot tamper with the data, that they don't introduce any malicious data. It becomes so uneconomical, so expensive for them to spend this computational power that they won't contemplate of using it on things like Sybil attacks or using it for malicious transactions, for example. And this was precisely the invention by Adam Back, also a PhD in computer science. He invented the proof of work that he called Hashcash. It's a system, and that's very widely used now in the Bitcoin algorithm, with some improvements, of course. There were some other inventions that really deserve mentioning, like Haber and Sonetta, how to timestamp digital documents. 92, Dwork and Nauer came up with the use of cryptographic proof of computational expenditure with the proof of work concept, but they applied it into a different context. Stephen Const came up with a general cryptographic theory of secure chains. Bram Cohen also needs to be mentioned. In the early 2000s, it became clear that the net that was originally envisaged as being very open, peer-to-peer, and decentralized was really becoming a walled garden. It was dominated by a handful of very powerful companies, and BitTorrent just tries to resurrect this idea that, after all, it's decentralized, it's a peer-to-peer environment, and his invention was the first file-sharing program. That also has got implications for the entire ethos of the cryptocurrency space. And Hal Finney also needs to be mentioned. He was one of the early contributors to the Bitcoin code, some patches, improvements to the code, and he was also the recipient of the first ever transactions from Satoshi Nakamoto. And that brings us to Satoshi Nakamoto's famous post. He wrote his famous white paper in 2008. Then he released the code, and then he posted on Bitcoin as an open source implementation of peer-to-peer currency. Further on, he continued to contribute to the code. He interacted with other people. He did some patches of coding because it was not perfect when it was released for the first time. And then in 2010, he stepped down and he withdrew completely from the space and disappeared. Nobody knows where he or she is. No, we really don't know whether it's a him or her, or maybe it's a group of people, but it's unlikely to be a group of people because some researchers have studied patterns of communication between Satoshi and other groups of people. And it's very clear that it's probably just one person communicating because of its consistency. So other people have stepped in, and now there are several organizations, including the Bitcoin Foundation, that looks after the blockchain, some of the improvements. There's one improvement that is going to be introduced by the end of this year that allows Bitcoin to do a little bit more than it's doing now. That's the famous Bitcoin Genesis block, lots of numbers, and Satoshi Nakamoto, being a cryptographer, time-stamped this Genesis block, the very first block, with a headline from Times, published on the 3rd of January 2009, Chancellor on the brink of second bailout for banks. So that's a very famous headline. It's a very famous paper, which costs now a lot of money because it has got some historical significance. And what he was also clearly alluding to here is that the financial system, the traditional financial system, failed us, and that's why Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies exist. The invention that Satoshi have come up with is very often misunderstood. Some tend to say, and particularly journalists, that he kind of invented blockchain. He didn't. He didn't even mention the name blockchain in his paper. Other people invented blockchains, but what he did come up with, he pieced up all these beautiful innovations from other researchers, from the community, from the crypto community, from Cypherpunks as well. And the idea is provable digital scarcity, and that's very, very significant. I also need to mention Ethereum, although technically it's not a predecessor of Bitcoin at all, but it builds on the idea of smart contracts introduced initially by Szabo, and the Ethereum platform is allowing us to do a little bit more than Bitcoin does. It allows us to program almost anything. It's written in Turing complete language called Solidity. And the two people behind Ethereum, there are many more people behind Ethereum, but that typically kind of the core team behind Ethereum are Vitalik Buterin, who was a teenager when he started Ethereum, and Dr. Gavin Wood. Dr. Gavin Wood is the author, the inventor of the Solidity language. He is now not with Ethereum anymore. He moved on. He's part of the Web3 Foundation and also co-founder of Polkadot, which is another interesting blockchain in this space. So let me conclude this with this statement: why Bitcoin and crypto matter. I think we can really put to rest all these unnecessary and silly ideas and very dangerous ideas that crypto is somehow a scam. It's an invention 40 years in the making, 40 years of research from some of the brilliant people and the most interesting minds on this planet, if you wish. It's not only is it a breakthrough in computer science, it's also a breakthrough in cryptography and game theory, and I personally believe it's worth of Nobel Prize. All of the world's wealth one day or another will be tokenized on blockchain. This is why we need to be paying attention to that. And we must agree, at least I do agree with David Chaum, that cryptography is the only way to prevent or protect the privacy of an individual in the information age. We will all have digital identities, it's coming, but they will be pseudo identities, which will be secured by cryptography. And my final point is, and it's not financial advice whatsoever, but learn about cryptocurrency. It's inevitable. All foundational technologies in the world are inevitable. So learn about them, open up your mind, probably try investing a little bit without losing too much, invest as much as you can afford, and maybe incorporate it into your business. All social networks, all communities, online communities will become tokenized one day. I don't even have any doubts about that. So this is it. I'll stop sharing my slides and I will see what kind of comments you have. Okay, let me see. Some of you, okay, hello. Are there any comments? Any questions? It doesn't seem to be the case. Well, if there are no questions, then fine. You've been on the Fringe show. I hope you learned something from it. And I will see you again on Friday in a week's time at 2 p.m. Dubai time. Thank you for joining me. Have a good day.